Hello, everybody, and welcome back to 50 Shades of Tay. I'm your host, Taylor Gonzalez, and today I have the composer of Your Monster, which stars Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey. It's in theaters right this minute, so as soon as you're done with this interview, if you haven't yet, go check it out. But I am joined by Tim Williams. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Taylor. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. What a fun film.
Isn't it
I
great?
I
Yeah.
loved it so much. How did you get attached to this project, and how did you get to be the composer for this?
Yeah, no, it was a real privilege. My agent said there's this really great film, and basically put my name forward. I sent through some of the music I'd done for Pearl and for some other films, and they felt that it could be a pretty good match. So I met with the director, Caroline Lindy, and Kayla Foster, who's the producer, but she's also does an amazing job of being Maisie in the film. And also met with the Lazors, who did the beautiful song, the two amazing songs in the film. And yeah, I think we sort of all felt like it could be a really great collaboration. They sent me a cut of the film, which I adored. I thought it was such a brilliant concept. And for me, what really attracted me to this film is that it's a mashup of genres. It feels like, I think someone said it was the love child between Nora Ephron and Drop Dead Fred.
Oh my gosh.
Or someone else said it was sort of like Adam's Family meets Nora Ephron. Some great, but that's what it was for me. Was just it just had so much heart. It was so engaging. Melissa Barrera and Tommy Dewey have so much chemistry together. They're so good. The rest of the cast is amazing as well. It just kind of leaps off the screen. And I just thought this, when it's always comes down to that pitch. What's the movie about? Well, it's about a girl who, you know, falls in love with the monster in her closet. I was like, no one, that's brilliant. No one's ever. Why has no one ever done this? It's such a
Mhm.
great idea for a film. So I uh, I jumped at the opportunity, and uh, really the challenge for me was to try and find a musical language that worked with the film. And I sort of felt like I needed two big themes. One was the main kind of when she's falling in love with the monster, and their kind of theme, which you first hear when he's reading the Shakespeare Sweet Mistress. He starts reading that, and that's the first time you start to. It's dropped a little earlier, and obviously it culminates later, but that's the first time we really feel like, oh my goodness, she's falling for monster. And then of course the other theme I wanted was something that represented her relationship with her ex-boyfriend.
Mhm.
And you hear that right at the very, very, very beginning, when they're in the middle of the breakup at the start of the film. So I needed something for the sort of the triangle, something that held both sides of it together. But it was such a cool film because it has the whole horror aspect of it. And obviously I don't want to give any spoilers, but I've heard the end is quite amazing for a lot of people. So
Oh my gosh. I loved the ending because it was unexpected. And
yes.
then, without giving anything away, the way that they reveal like what happens, I thought was really interesting. And I love the ending. I love the movie from start to finish. I
Oh,
already went into it like with high expectations because I love Melissa Barrera. I think she's like one of the greatest actresses out there right now. And what's great about this movie is she really gets to showcase a huge range of emotions from like sadness to anger to excitement. And so I thought like what a perfect role for her to get to
and
show
sing
off.
her voice. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I was
I
like, when they said, "Oh, Melissa Barrera sing," I'm like, really? That's amazing. And then I heard her voice. I was like, oh my goodness, she's also an amazing singer. It's sort of not fair.
Yeah, I had no clue that she could sing like that.
Yeah.
So when I heard the same thing that she was going to sing, I was like, "Oh, that's exciting." Like I can't wait to hear it. But then when I heard it, I was like, "Oh no, she can sing. It's not
Oh
like,
yeah.
and I've been listening to that song on repeat. You said earlier it was the I'm sorry, how do you pronounce it? The Lazarus?
Lazors.
The Zors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, who worked
And
on those songs.
yeah,
Did you
yeah.
have any collaboration with them when those
Well,
songs were coming together?
I not in the writing of the songs, but I did all the arrangements for the songs,
Oh,
and sort of incorporated it into sort of the orchestral aesthetic when that kicks in. And the other song that I arranged and produced is the song that is the car produced song. which they play at the piano in the middle, and that was such a the agony over that song, because what was originally in there was "Nobody Does It Better" from the James Bond song Carly Simon,
Oh.
and everyone thought it was cleared and we were good to go, and then at the last minute, there was sort of like, no, you can't have the song. And even Carly Simon was like reaching out to try and make it happen, but it was like, no. So they had to go back and reshoot that song. And To be on the safe side, the decision was made, let's record two songs in that spot just in case the same thing happens again. So we did. So there's a version of Nobody Does It Better, which I'm so sorry people don't get to see, because it was brilliant. It was so good. The other song we picked was "Someone to Watch Over You," the Gershwin song,
Oh.
and again they did a beautiful job. But the Carpenter song was one that, I don't know, Melissa just blew it away. She came in and it was so right for her voice, and then they went out and reshot that scene, and the banter and everything that they did it's all, a lot of it was ad lib, and it was so funny and so charming. And that's the one that ended up in the movie. But literally up until like the very, very last day of dubbing, it could have gone either way. We had both versions kind of ready, and it was like, we don't know which one to put in. So that was kind of the drama on the movie, was which song for that scene, because it's a pivotal scene. It's the scene where they both first kind of duet together, and you see the chemistry, you see what could possibly be there in that scene. But yeah, I'm so sad other people don't get to see the Nobody Does It Better, because that also was a really beautiful scene with that in it.
Wow. Maybe like on a Blu-ray or some kind of like collector's edition, one day we'll get to have like the deleted scene or something. That'd be nice.
It really would be.
One thing that I loved about the film was Tommy's portrayal of Monster.
Yes.
And I interviewed the costume designer yesterday, Matthew Simonelli of the film, and I asked him the same question, and I'm curious what your answer is. What was your reaction when you saw Tommy in the full costume and prosthetics and the makeup and everything?
I thought, this dude is handsome. I mean, he's supposed to be a monster, but this guy oozes chemistry. Um, I, you know, I just thought it's such a difficult role to play. You've got to be you've got to be a monster, and yet somewhere in it find that balance between being terrifying,
Right.
but also being the charismatic lead. And I just thought he did such a great job. He is so funny, so charming. And one of my favorite scenes is when they're watching the TV, and he's like, I'm not crying, I'm not crying. Uh, it, I don't know, just to me, it really worked well. And of course, later on, again, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there's a heartbreaking scene where they're arguing, and again, you just feel for him. He comes across so well, and it's such a challenge because he's acting behind all this prosthetic, and the character has to kind of come out from behind all of this makeup. But he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. He's got a big career, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I was also very curious because I've been interviewing a lot of composers lately, and what's interesting to me is I thought it was going to be like uniform across the board. This is how you score a film, or this is how you score a TV show. But I've been finding out more and more like people come at it from different perspectives and people get different things to work with. So I've talked to people who have only worked on uh, their scores using just like stills or concept art, or some people who haven't seen a single frame of what they're working on and they have to come up with the score. And then I've also talked to people who have the full finished product and then they just score along to that. Is that more of like what you had? You had the movie with other songs inserted and then you came up with the score?
Yeah, there were definitely re-edits going on as I was scoring the film that sort of had quite an impact on the score. But my preferred way is getting it as close to finished as possible. I've actually had several films that I've worked on. Pearl was locked. When I got Pearl, they said this is not changing, and it's not the convention these days. When we worked on Guardians of the Galaxy, it was changing. We got like 35 different versions of the film during the time we were scoring, and it's I liken it a bit to trying to sort of create a custom suit for a guy, but he's jogging and he's gaining weight and losing weight, and it's like very very difficult to create that suit. And it's similar when the film constantly changes because you score to the frame
Mhm.
and the shape and pacing of the scene. If it's re-edited, it suddenly changes, and more often than not, the music you've written doesn't work. So Pearl for me was wonderful because nothing changed. I could really shape the music for that, and uh, this had a few different versions, but for the most part, most of the key scenes stayed the same. But especially with something that has, and in more general terms, this didn't have a ton of VFX, but in films where you do get a lot of VFX,
Mhm.
it's horrible because you finally see the film at the opening with the VFX, and you're like, oh, if I'd known that ship was going to be there, I would have done a gesture for the ship, or I would have done this or
Mhm.
that. So without the VFX, you sort of have to imagine where everything's going to be, and they'll usually just put like, this is where the spear strikes through the person, or some kind of dramatic blip on the screen, so you
Mhm.
sort of know what's going on, but it's not the same. So in general terms, I like to get the film as late as I possibly can in the process, because then I can really see music's all about pacing and tone. So if that's there in the edit and that's there in what you're seeing, then you can, I think, score it better.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned that because last night I was watching the John Williams documentary that just came out on Disney
Right.
Plus. It's
Yes.
phenomenal. It's so good. I loved it. And they were talking about how when he was scoring to Indiana Jones, he would write like individual little notes for all the snakes as they would like move and slither around. And I was like, oh, that's what that reminds me of. But now it's harder with all the like the visual effects. It's like you don't know
No,
exactly what will be there. It's so
no, and
different
and
now.
often VFX is done after the dub. So you finished your movie, the dub is done, and the visual effects are still catching up. So by the time you see it, what you're seeing is not what you scored. So that's definitely a frustration in the process.
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone can come up with a solution, but as
Yeah.
I said, occasionally I do get films that are locked, and
Mhm.
that is absolutely my favorite because I can really, I can take a theme and I can develop it and really pace it out to different scenes, and and do what you're supposed to do, which is to, with composing, is to sort of have a hook that goes through the whole thing. And it's much harder when the film keeps changing.
Two of my favorite songs of yours on this soundtrack are Meet Laura and Meet Monster. I love those two introduction songs for both those characters. I was wondering what similarities those two songs might have because it's two introduction songs for two completely different characters. But what would you say might they might have in common with each other?
Well, they both, the Meet Laura has the beginnings of the love theme. Just you just subtly hear it coming in at the end, um, and I think if I'm recalling correctly, Meet Monster is actually when she's in the closet for the very first time. So that's
Mhm.
scored as more of a horror beat at that point. Um, but again, I was, as I was saying, I always try to put fragments of the theme in there so that even if it's just a quick line, in a flute or something, or a guitar or something, I try as much as possible to weave the hook through the whole film. And I think that's one of the things that music can do. When I often get a film for the first time, the director's kind of pulling his hair out and going, the temp's not working. Temp being the music they put in temporarily
Mhm.
when they edit the film. It's not the final music, but they're trying to give it some sense of where should music be and what should the tone of the music be.
Mhm.
But often I'll meet directors who are pulling their hair out because they're saying this score doesn't work. It's not, and I'm like, well, of course it's not going to work because you don't have a theme. You don't. It's not.
Right.
Nothing's being unified. You're not taking those kind of mirror moments in the drama. And when you use the same music in a different way at different points in the movie, it it has such an emotional impact on you
Mhm.
because you remember, oh yes, that subconsciously you go, oh, that's their love theme, but now it's tragic, because they're breaking up or whatever. So do it. It's a great thing that a film score can do. If you think of John Williams, I
Mhm.
mean, John Williams is a master of that, of taking the great theme you hear at the beginning, but then you hear it later in a different context with a
Yeah.
different spin on it, and it just connects the film. You suddenly realize it's a universe. And I think that's one of the things I love to do as a film composer is, and it's the hardest thing for me to do, is what is the musical universe of the film? And I tend to try to invent a music language for every film I do. There's a the what music does every time is the same, but it's what is the instrumentation, what is the coloring, what is it meant to evoke, what is the tone, and that's something that I pretty much start from a blank page for every film because I want every film to feel unique.
Mhm.
Um, and it's hard to do. it's that's the thing that sort of causes me late nights while I'm sitting there. What should this sound like? What's the
Mhm.
musical universe of this film? But and again, with just to sort of harken back to Pearl, that was the stylization of that score was very much like this needs to feel like an older, like Alfred Hitchcock film. So the music has to be in that style,
Mhm.
even though it's doing the same thing. So that's always the challenge. It's always finding the way in. So with me for Pearl, I was trying to. One of the early discussions I had is I said this shouldn't feel like fantasy
Mhm.
because I said that's so. One of the original temp pieces had celeste and more of that kind of fantasy coloring to it, and I said no, this needs to feel like this is real and could happen to anybody.
Mhm.
I said because the comedy will play better. I said it needs to feel like a true romance, and let's not play the comedy. Let's not play the fantasy. Let's play it as a real love story, like as if this. And that was one of the things I think that we discussed early on in in what the score should be was, let's play the romance as if these are two real people
Mhm.
and their love story is real and there's jeopardy and love and all those kinds of things, and not let's not play the comedy and let's not play fantasy at all. And I think it makes the film stronger because you kind of go into that world and get swept away by the story because
Mhm.
it's played real. But that's always the kind of discussion you have, just like every department, the costuming department, all production design, all of these people have that conversation about what is the tone of this film,
Right.
what is the universe we're creating.
Ugh. I love this score, and one thing that I'm very much hoping for, I checked before we did this interview, but I couldn't find the answer anywhere. Do you know if there's going to be a physical release for this soundtrack?
There's not
Oh,
currently, not
okay.
currently. Movie Score Media, who are dear friends of mine and have done a bunch of releases for me, um, have released it, and I know that they might be open. It's always just about what's the demand. If there's enough demand there, yes.
Mhm.
I know that they will. I can reach. It's Movie Score Media. So if you bombard their email with, "Hey, we want a physical release," then at a certain point he'll go, "Sure." I know that he has produced CDs for me in the past. It's a question
Oh.
of whether it would be vinyl or not. And vinyl is just pricey to produce.
Mhm.
I think you have a minimum order of probably 500 records that you have to print. Um, but I think if the demand is there, it's something that could be discussed. So
Mhm. Yeah, I love collecting vinyl, especially for all of my favorite films. Like right over here on the shelf, I'm looking, I have my Scream boxed set. It's
nice.
all of the Scream, and they're like a blood red color. I
Oh, I
have
love.
a couple vinyls that you've done, the Guardians of the Galaxy ones. I got those at
Yes,
D23. Love them so much. Do you collect vinyls?
I
I'm sure
do.
you do. What are
I
some of your
do. And
favorites?
and funnily enough, my kids when they first started out, they're like, "Dad, what are those old dusty things on the wall?" And I'm like, "These are cold records." And so it's interesting watching how music has kind of gone through all these. I remember when it switched to CDs, and then eventually it became digital. But um, all my kids have gone back to vinyl because of the way it sounds. It sounds like it's in the room. It sounds warm. It sounds live. There's such a difference because when they do digital, they cut tons of frequencies off and all the resonant harmonies to squish it down so it can play on your on your phone or wherever you're listening. But with vinyl, it's a direct reproduction into the vinyl of the music. So it just sounds so different. So yeah, we're huge vinyl fans in this family, and my old record collection has become very, very popular again. So that's great
Oh
because
yeah,
I
that's great.
collected hundreds of records. I have so many records. That's kind of how I was obsessed with records growing up. So
Yeah, they're my favorite. I just love having the box and all the artwork and all the
yes,
lyrics and
yes,
being
it's
able
the
to
art,
hold stuff. It's just so much better.
isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, yeah. I think so. And it's just that, what used to go into like the production were all the photos and all the notes from the band. It was so much more, you could connect so much more with what the band or the artist was trying to do.
Mm.
It wasn't just about here's the music, it was the whole, like, here's shots of us in the studio, or this was the vision for the album. I don't know, I mean, I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, so all those amazing, like, Dark Side of the Moon and the Wall, like the artwork on that stuff is legendary. It's
Mhm.
so good. So it to me, it just adds to the whole. And my daughter is a huge fan of artists like Leve, and so she just is nothing but, we've got to get the next album. Oh, she's just released another album, like it's the same album with one extra song. No, I need this vinyl, I've got to have it.
Oh, so cool.
And I think it's wonderful, I really do. I think it's great to see people going out and getting and getting vinyl again, and that experience of opening it up and
Mhm.
reading, and it just enhances the whole experience, I think.
No, I totally agree. One of my favorites in my collection is Beetlejuice. It came with really cool art cards, and it came with the vinyl record itself, like is I think it's like glow in the dark or something like that. It's
It,
so cool. They have so many different designs. I just saw one of my favorite artists is Troye Sivan, and
yeah,
he has a vinyl coming out, and he has a song called Honey on the new album. They're gonna have it honey filled, and that like blew my mind that they're gonna do that. It's a clear vinyl with honey inside of it.
I'm so glad records are coming back, because they like even CDs for me were disappointing because they're so small that there's not, you just like you're sitting there with a magnifying glass trying to read everything, like. But with a record, it was such a great size. You could just like get, and then when they put the sleeves in as well, we actually could pull out a page or two of, or some of them you used to open up and they were like books. You could flip through, and there was like so much artwork. I'm I've watched the stats on vinyl, and they're really coming back, like
Yeah.
significantly, um, which is great.
I'm so happy. I think a lot of it has to do with Taylor Swift and Lana Del Rey.
Yes,
I think the two of them are very much helping this industry, and I'm so thankful for that because yeah, I love it, and I'm really hoping that yours gets a release on physical media somehow, because I would love to add it to my collection.
I'll reach out to Mikhail, who runs Movie Score Media, and
Yeah.
say, what would this take? But I'm pretty sure he can do it. I'm pretty sure it could be done, because I think it. I don't know. I'm really hoping Your Monster gets that kind of cult status that, and I think it might. Everyone, I had a LA film critic phone me a couple days ago, and he just said, "I just got out of the theater, saw Your Monster. I think it's the best movie of the year. I think the score is the best score I've heard all year." And I'm like, "Wow!" And he said, "I'm going to go to Facebook right now, and I'm going to
Oh.
just tell everybody about this movie, because it's a low budget indie. It's
Mhm.
a small film. It doesn't have that kind of big clout to get the word out, to
Yeah.
let people know about it. So you know." Everyone's very reliant on word of mouth, but so far the word of mouth seems really strong on the movie, and hopefully that'll be enough to just kind of make it into one of those films that people go, "Oh, it's just a gem. You got to go and see it."
Yeah. I've been telling all my friends, all my family about it. Everyone that I've talked to that has seen it, everyone's super positive on it. Everyone loves it. So I don't like saying this because I hope it finds its, audience in theaters. However, if it doesn't, because it's going to be a limited release and everything,
Yes,
there's always, when it goes to streaming, even though my number one preferred method is in the theaters.
absolutely.
However, streaming now, it's just like if this goes to Netflix, if this goes to Max, if it goes to Hulu, like who knows where it'll end up. I really think this movie is going to find its audience and it deserves it because it's so fun. It's so fresh, and the performances, the costumes, the music, everything just fits together perfectly.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Well, as I said, I was blown away when I first saw it, and I love filmmakers who take a chance.
Mhm.
And I knew this film was a risk because it's putting together two genres, rom-com and horror, in a way that's never been done before. And I love it when filmmakers take that chance, because it can go wrong, or it can go right, but it's definitely not following the playbook of a typical rom-com. And I thought that was really clever, and deserves to be seen, and it's exciting when fans and people who go and watch it kind of get it too and go, yeah, this is it's a mashup, but we love it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If there's people watching this interview right now and they're interested in becoming a composer themselves, what kind of advice would you give to them?
So I think there's a couple things. One is first off to find your voice. I think if you can, and I give that advice having not followed it at all myself. I've done so many different films in so many different styles, and obviously I think that's part of, you have to be adaptable. But I do think one of the things that is important about being an artist is to find what you do well, and what do you have to say. And I think that's something that if you can brand that and people kind of come to that and go, hey, this is what I want, then that's really going to, then that's why they're coming to you as opposed to someone else. And the second thing is films, being a film composer is all about your relationship with the director. So I always encourage people, go meet directors, go and find a director. If you get a great working relationship with a director, and that's, as I've worked in this industry, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed is not just working with, I've done, I've got directors I've done 5-6 films with, and it's a bit, when you look at John Williams, it's that John Williams Steven Spielberg relationship. But there's something about when you work with a director and you get to know their style and you get to know what they're looking for, you can actually write better because you're writing from that place of really understanding them as an artist and being able to express that musically. So that to me is the most exciting thing, is when you see, directors who've worked with composers for a long time. It's always exciting because they're working as a team. It's a collaboration, which is what filmmaking really is. It's always a collaboration, and trying to express the director's story through music. It's very cool. So that's the thing. Go to film festivals, go to wherever, but meet directors, meet directors, and get your music in front of a director. And if you combine those things where you're saying, this is what I do, it's not just what I do, but this is what I love doing, this style, and it clicks with a director, I mean, that's it. You're off to the races.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love your work on Pearl, which I'm so glad you brought up Pearl, because I love that movie and I love your score on that.
Oh, thank you.
I love your collaborations with Tyler Bates. I love this soundtrack that you did. I can't wait to see what you do next. And for everybody else who wants to keep up with all your upcoming releases, where would be a good place for people to come follow you?
Just come to my website is timothywilliams.net. So pretty straightforward. My name with .net after it. .com was sadly taken. And my Instagram is Timothy Williams Official on Instagram. So they can follow me on Instagram. I tend to try to keep all of that stuff as up to date as I possibly can. But you can actually go to my website and not only hear stuff I've released, but you can hear scores that aren't even out yet. I tend to put because I have Eye for an Eye, which is a very, very cool horror film coming up, which was done by Leyline, who did Everything Everywhere All at Once. I had that coming up. Beautiful film called Mistura that just won Best Feature at the Newport. But that's a Peruvian film set in the 60s. That's coming down the pipeline. And then I have 2 Anthony Hopkins films coming up. The first releases on Netflix. It's called Mary, and Hopkins plays Herod. That's releasing December 6th on Netflix. And the other one that's just behind it is a thriller with Anthony Hopkins and Bill Skarsgård, and that's a Sam Raimi thriller directed by Dave Yarovesky, who I worked on Brightburn with. So cool. We're teamed up again, and it is intense. So I can't wait for people to see that. Anthony Hopkins just doing his best, manipulating poor old Bill Skarsgård, who's caught in his trap. So it's a very cool film. So there's really some really fun stuff coming down the pipeline.
Oh my gosh,
so,
I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to have you on again, because all those projects are like, oh my God, I want to see all of these right now. But Tim, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you. It was so lovely to meet you and get to chat with you, but I would love to have you back on when these other projects are coming out.
I would love that. Such a great pleasure to meet you, and thank you for having me on, Taylor.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye.